Okay, we are going live.
Okay,
Okay, good. So, how are you?
good. How are you doing, Manny?
Yeah, not too bad. Uh, I don't know. There was a technical issue. Finally, we
Yeah,
figured it out. So
sounds
that's
like we
good.
got it right now.
Yeah, yeah. So, how are things overall? You want to
Good, thank
start
you.
by talking about yourself?
I just briefly, Manny, as you know me, I'm a manufacturing executive from the local area. So I guess I've got some insights to the questions you may have be asking us tonight.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. So, what I wanted to talk to you about is overall, we all know that we are going through the pandemic, and in March
Yes, we are.
it'll be almost 1 year in March. So probably we can talk something about the pandemic, vaccination, impact of social media. We talk about federal and provincial level leadership, and maybe a little bit of municipal policies. Uh, so probably we can start by that. So you're
Sure, you
ready?
just pick a question and we'll discuss it.
Okay. So you're ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So what I want to ask you, the first question would be, how has pandemic impacted your life and how you have been able to adapt and adjust to the new way of life?
I mean, I think the pandemic is more the effect of my life, I guess, is having my son at home. I feel for them not being in school because I think being in school is imperative for the kids for their learning and for their future. For me, I work from home 2 days a week. I think the biggest impact in my life has not been on travel. I do quite a bit of traveling, and last year I wanted to travel back to my homeland and wasn't able to do that. Uh, so I mean that's where I find the impact. I think it's just the social interactions and the stress of being sort of trying to stay at home, be cooped up, follow the guidelines, which I think are very confusing to most people. There seems to be people who are trying to do it and then other individuals who just totally don't care. And I think that makes it very hard in society when nobody wants to follow order or those who are not doing it. I think the most part I find people are, trying to do the best they can to social distance and still have a sense of normalcy.
Hmm. So you're basically a happy man all these months.
It's always tried. I think we're social creatures by habit, and when you get that social thing taken away, we would with the family we did try to get a few outings in this year, but it's very difficult. I
Hmm.
mean, you're always now skeptical, and you have this tendency to worry about COVID. It's on your mind constantly, and wonder if you'll catch the disease, even if you're wearing your mask, washing your hands. So, I mean, it has more of a psychological impact than it does anything else.
Hmm. Okay. So what is the worst outcome of this pandemic and the positive outcomes of this pandemic? What do you think?
Uh, I think our lives are forever changed. Um, I don't see. I think what we consider to be the norm prior to the pandemic for everybody is changed. The thought processes have changed. Working from home, I think this is probably the most profound impact of it.
Hmm.
I'm not too sure there's a lot of positives um,
No,
from the
environment
COVID.
wise.
Pardon me?
Environment.
Yeah, I mean, there's less traffic on the roads and that, but those are minor things. I mean, when you go forward, that's going to go back to the norms as far as travel and environmental impacts. I think that's a separate issue in itself. I think people being bottled up inside you start to lose your social skills. Kids get more accustomed to being on the computer versus outside playing. I think families, are having greater problems, not being able to meet with each other. Those have long term and devastating effects on our social being and our psychological thing. It's one of those things. It's a change in society. If you look
Mhm.
through the times, wars, other pandemics, have all had a change in society, and I think this is something that's just going to be different. The only good point is if there's a light at the end of the tunnel and the vaccines we'll get back to some sort of normalcy, but it's not going to happen. It's going to
Mhm.
take years. I think this is going to have a scar on our generation going through the schools, especially the young kids, that they'll remember the rest of their lives.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely a life-changing event. But as far as
Oh
I'm
yeah,
concerned, the positive things I see is, of course, the work from home, and I don't have to do daily commute to work, saving on gas, good on the environment side, right? That's the way I'm seeing this. And
yeah, and that's true. But then it takes away. I think work from home has got some goods and bad. I also think the part of business, and depending on what you're doing, still needs that social interaction. You still need to get on site, especially in the manufacturing sectors.
Mhm.
In an IT or some of the insurance and other things, they can work from home. But
Mhm.
your industrial base and that still has to travel in to make products.
That is
People
true. There
still
are
have
some jobs.
to, yeah. I mean, people still have to go to their restaurants and cook food. People still have to go to the big box stores. So there's a lot of society that cannot work from home.
That
I
is true.
think you're right. Yeah. I mean, law firms, engineering firms, things that, yes, they'll have a profound change, but the bulk of the jobs aren't able to do that.
Yeah.
And they're being the hardest hit. They're the ones who are, being lost their jobs, out of work, laid off. Yeah, it's a small thing to the environment. I agree, but it's a lived, and it's not sustainable. Those
The
things can be.
one other interesting thing is, like you're saying, it's a short thing. What I'm thinking is, let's say once everybody is vaccinated, most of the people in the world, people will be so excited to go out and do a drive, and then we will see maybe the gas prices will be interesting.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true. And I mean, even my family, from being cooped up in the house, especially the first time around, we go out on a Sunday drive for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Never get out of
Hmm.
our vehicles, never do anything. The most we get would be maybe a Tim Hortons or something through the drive-through, but you had to get out of the house.
Hmm.
You're cooped up.
Hmm.
We're lucky that we have a large enough house that we can move around in, but not everybody's got that privilege.
I agree, especially people who are
And
in high-rise condominiums. Yeah.
yes, high rises and stuff like that, they don't have the extra space. At least the three of us could go to separate parts of the house and leave each other alone. Not everybody's got that privilege. I enjoy being in my backyard. I enjoy the fresh air.
Hmm.
So you're right. When this pandemic goes, that I think there's going to be an explosion
Hmm.
of people out and about.
Hmm.
And so the offset right now, yes, there's not as many cars on the road. And I too commute into Toronto. But when the pandemic's gone, you're going to see people wanting to get out. They're going to go to the beaches. They're going to go and do things. So
Hmm.
you're going to have an increase.
Hmm.
So it's an offset, the way I look at it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I do agree. I do agree. A lot of people, even myself, I'm just excited once things get, all this vaccination all done. I just want to travel. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Like probably I may not be able to travel, but some other politicians maybe secretly.
Yeah. I mean, part of our summer is to go away for long weekends. Part of,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's just, society. Even this year, we had a couple of families. We went up by the water
Hmm.
just for the day, just to get out, move, breathe the fresh air, listen to the seaside. You have to do that, or you just go what I would consider, bonkers.
Hmm.
Of course, I grew up in an age where we didn't have computers and we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have video games. It was out in the winter, a couple hockey nets and hockey sticks and the ball, and you went outside for the day.
Hmm.
So different,
Yeah.
different generation, but there's a need to go out and socialize. And
Hmm.
what I've seen over the years in industry, and that the generations coming up with the computerized generation, they don't have the social skills that we had.
Yeah, I agree. Agree.
You know,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we know uh, what we are going through, and we know where we want to go. We want to travel and socialize. But in order for that to happen, we need to get vaccinated. Vaccinated. So my next question is: do you think Canada is doing a good job when it comes to vaccination rollout?
um, the answer is yes and no. There's two-part answer. I think
Hmm.
the logistics that is set up to distribute the vaccine throughout Canada is good. You know,
Hmm.
I and I think there's a good way. Once the vaccine is available, I think you can get it to all the different outlets.
Hmm.
Where I think there's a big failure is the inoculation side, and
Hmm.
then be able to keep track of the inoculations. I don't believe there's systems in place. If you get vaccinated today, where's the list to say you have to be back in 21 days? I think the failure is the control mechanism once the vaccines are on site and
Hmm.
trying to move through. I mean, I think it's cumbersome because of manualization of recording of people getting vaccinated.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
always every group thinks they should be first.
Hmm.
And I think those are tough decisions for all government levels.
Hmm.
And it's a challenge. It's hard
Hmm.
to just criticize without being
Hmm.
able to give them a solution to their problem.
Hmm.
And it, I think the challenges are far greater than just saying let's get everybody inoculated. I think there's a lot more to it, and who do we do first? When did we do first? How do we keep a record? And there's always that uncertainty of supply. We
Hmm.
don't know when we're going to get it, and
Hmm.
this is where I think some of the failures are. I mean, I
Hmm.
know we wanted to get started right away, and I think we started putting vaccines in the arms as soon as we got a couple. But I think
Hmm.
the supply line should have been more secured
Hmm.
so that we have a constant flow of vaccines coming into our area.
Hmm. Like I looked at the
Long-winded
world.
answer.
Yeah, I looked at the world statistics. So what I see was when initially
Yeah,
Canada started vaccination, then
yeah,
at that time Canada was in one of the top 10 countries, and now I don't even
yep.
see Canada in that radar. Even countries like UAE and other smaller countries, they are now on the top. So I don't know what kind of contract negotiations they did, and we did. We did. I
Well,
think
I
based on
think
what I read was in terms of per capita, we ordered more vaccination than any other country in the world. But we ordered, but
yes,
when
we
it
did.
comes to vaccination on the ground, it's totally a different story now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we went out and bought all these vaccines, which we
Hmm.
prepaid for, but we know I think we spent too much time trying to prepay for vaccines and not enough time trying to secure the pipeline.
Hmm.
And there's a big difference from buying something and having it delivered to you. And
Correct.
I
I
think
agree.
the failure of the government is where we didn't make sure the supply line was intact.
Hmm.
I think we left too much to the vaccine companies whether or not they would supply us on time and who
Mhm.
got it. Obviously, these other countries have secured the supply chain. I don't
Mhm.
think Canada is any worse than anybody being able to put it in the arm when we actually have the vaccine in hand. It's getting that vaccine in hand is our biggest issue. And with
Yeah,
the
but
Pfizer having special critical containment conditions, it also makes it very difficult to move them around. And the miser, where you don't have the controls for cooling, is a little more simpler. But I think we just went out and bought stuff. We never really looked at how to get it into the arms of Canadians. And I
Mhm.
don't think we spent enough time on making sure that the supply from the suppliers or manufacturers were secured to the level it should have been.
Well, I think as far as the government messaging was concerned, like it. I felt comfortable that they have everything in place, and Canadians don't have to worry because that's what the messaging was. But when it came to reality, I don't know how come other countries are able to get quicker access to the vaccination and not Canada. I'm surprised even UAE.
Yeah,
UAE is now one of the top five countries which have highest vaccination rollout. So right.
yeah, and
Another thing we
that's
should
just
focus
it.
is the manufacturing.
Yeah, Canada did have the manufacturing technology at one time to make those types of vaccines, and we dropped it off.
Hmm.
And I don't believe the government there were it was politicized that we've done this instead of really pulling back the layers of the onions and looking at you know where this stuff is coming from. How much have we actually secured?
Hmm.
Yeah, sure, I bought 20 million shots, but did you secure that supply line? Everybody
Hmm.
in the world is looking for it. And
Hmm.
it becomes, building those relationships
Hmm.
with your suppliers, talking to them daily, especially in something as critical as this.
Hmm.
I've made shipments around the world and talking to the logistics people. Is it in the
Hmm.
supply? Do we have the trucks? Do we have the containers?
Hmm.
Do we have the shipping? And I think the failure to the government is that they talked a great game and made us feel comfortable, but saying we've got 100 million, we've bought 100 million shots of vaccine or whatever the true number is. I'm just uh, sort of overemphasizing it, but it doesn't matter. It's great to put all these numbers, but how many bottles or vials are actually getting transported to Canada?
Hmm.
And that's where the question and the difficulty lies. Just to say that you've bought this doesn't mean anything. It only means something when those vials actually show up in Canada.
Yeah. The other thing is what I feel is the countries that have most of their population vaccinated, economically they are on advantage side too. Of course, to
Yep.
travel, you want other countries also to vaccinate their citizens. But I think in terms of domestic economy, I feel the more quicker you get vaccinated, the more you can go back to work and do your normal things. Hopefully, these vaccinations are effective. That's my next
Yeah. Well,
question. So my question is how confident you are with the approved vaccination and its effectiveness?
I am confident that the effectiveness in the short term is good.
Hmm.
I am not confident in the fact that what the long term effects will be because
Hmm.
they haven't studied it.
Hmm.
They are not even sure if you get vaccinated in the two doses, how long it will last and how long
Hmm.
you'll be immune to it.
Hmm.
This could be something that every year we have to go for a COVID vaccine,
Hmm.
uh, just like the flu shot.
Hmm.
The same sort of ideology. Every year you have to get topped up. You have to get the booster shot.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of unanswered scientific questions that they can't answer right now because they haven't studied it long enough.
Hmm. I agree.
I think in the short term, the vaccine is going to work. It'll get rid of, give your immune system immunity to the COVID-19. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the long-term effects are,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if this is something you'll have to get a booster every year.
Okay.
And
That makes
nobody
sense.
can
I
answer
agree
those.
with your thought.
Yeah, nobody can answer those questions because they haven't studied it long enough.
I
I
agree.
mean, they've only started putting the vaccines into the arms of people. What, December? The first
Mm-hmm.
people started to get it, and the trials were very short.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and
Mm-hmm.
even to the long-term effects of what they're giving us.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I also think the approvals for the vaccines, not necessarily sidestep the protocols that are in place to approve a vaccine, but given the short time it took to develop it, they haven't been able to study the long-term effects. And a lot of these vaccines in the past have had 2, 3, 4 years of study,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just to study the long-term effects
Mm-hmm.
and the effectiveness of the vaccinations that you got.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done that, so we don't have any way of giving the answers. We can project it, we can
Mm-hmm.
theorize based on very credible evidence, but until you actually have it, you don't know.
Yep. I agree. Okay, that brings me to the next question. How long
Sure,
will
what's
it
next?
take before things go back to normal?
I don't think things will ever go back to normal. I think, we've,
5 years?
you know, I think once people, if once a herd immunity is in place, where a great percentage of the population have been inoculated to the disease, people are starting to let their guard down. They let their guard down during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
People started going back out. People started going to the restaurants. People started to socialize.
Mm-hmm.
That part will come back, I think, fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But to be normal, I think this pandemic has changed society. We've had a phase shift.
Mm-hmm.
Society is different,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll never go back to what it was pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
There's a change, whether it's working from home, whether our social etiquettes will change. I mean, will we ever go back to shaking hands?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the elbow touch has been a lot of fun or stuff like that, but will we ever go back? The social graces where people gave somebody a hug when they met them, the old boys club. Will we ever go back to that? And my answer to that is certain generations will, others will not.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I know your background is very social.
Mm-hmm.
It's very communicative. People get together in the community, and there's that social touching
Yep.
interaction to a certain degree. My background being Scottish, it's a lot of good social interactions, and there's touching, there's hugging. Um, these things in the younger generation is going to change,
You
even in
forgot about
school.
one important thing. There's one more item
Yeah,
which we never talk, but that will be big. A big impact. Where the way I say is one is the dating and the sex.
yeah. I mean, it's probably better than AIDS was. People are
Exactly.
going to be scared. They're going to have. There's always going to be something in the back of their mind saying, "Are you disease free?" I mean, I remember in my younger days, during the height of the AIDS pandemic, going through the social diseases, a lot of people said, hey, do you have AIDS? Have you been
Mm-hmm.
tested? Are you taking precautions? It
Mm-hmm.
changed the mentality the way we thought. So COVID
Mm-hmm.
19 is going to have the same impact. Eh, Anything that
Mm-hmm.
has affected the world on a global stance is going to have profound impacts on the societies within it. And our society has changed.
Yeah.
And that's it's a fact of life. It's just the way things are going to be. Are we going to try to get back to social norms? Yes. Is it going to happen quickly? I don't think so. I think
Maybe.
we're going to struggle getting through 2021 into 22. And then when you get, as you get confidence and start to get back to work and be able to go out and travel a little bit, you're always going to have this in the back of your mind.
Mhm.
It's never going away. It's part of who we are as human beings now.
I don't know if we have that solution yet or not, but maybe it's not effective as a rapid test. I would like to see something, a test just like you can get like a pregnancy kit test, right? You take
Well, the
some
rapid
sample,
test,
whatever
yeah.
way, and then you get a result. Other than that, I don't know how things will in future looks like. Hopefully, somebody will invent something which is very positive.
Well, I don't know why the rapid testing hasn't been widely used. I agree it's not as effective as the swab or as accurate, but it's still in the high 70s, I believe.
Hmm.
It's an indicator.
Hmm. Correct.
And and that indicator, I think, for uh, frontline workers is good. Even going to the schools, if there's someone they feel there's an outbreak in the classroom, or somebody had test positive, you could do a whole bunch of kids very quickly, uh, non-intrusively. People coming back into Canada should be 100% tested. Why
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Our quarantine system is an honor system. That's great. Yeah, guys, stay home 14 days. Yes,
I
and we
think
know how
I
they
don't know.
don't.
I heard something where the Trudeau government wants to do a mandatory hotel quarantine. I don't know why they didn't even think or entertain this idea because a lot of other countries like India they already have this since March.
Well, that's just it. You know,
Like a lot of things what we are doing now, a lot of countries have already done it months back.
yeah, I thought we were gonna keep my political views out of this, but yeah,
Yeah.
the prime minister's office definitely has failed Canada.
Yeah.
As far as securing our borders, ensuring that countries with high outbreaks have not been able to fly in, and a lot of it was by air travel that brought the disease to Canada in the first place.
Hmm.
And sometimes we have to make these tough decisions to shut down our airways to infected countries, and we didn't. Two countries that were highly infected at the start of this pandemic, both China and Iran. Iran only because of the crash of the airline, which was very tragic. A lot
Hmm.
of people came back infected.
Yeah.
A lot of Chinese Canadians came back infected, from Wuhan because of the Chinese New Year time.
Hmm.
And, I think if we'd been a little bit more stringent there, we would have at least eased the spread of the first. But the second go around, we still don't have good, strong policies in place curtailing travel into Canada.
Hmm.
My office is by the airport, and I watch the jets take off and land all day long. There
Yeah.
was a point in March and April where you see an aircraft every once in a while, but they're back to fairly regular flights. And it's not just between Canada and United States; it's international carriers coming in as well. And
Yeah.
in Toronto International and all the other international airports within Canada, you just walk right in, and
Hmm.
they're not stopping people and testing them. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, sure, you get a test 3 days, but this is too little, too late. It should have been done, as you said, months ago. You
Yeah.
know, make people quarantine. If you want to come to Canada, then part of that is that you have to go to a facility or a hotel, and you self isolate for 14 days. You get a test, and it's part of your travel expenses. And we didn't do it, and I don't know why.
Okay, I want to switch gear now. I want to go to a
Sure.
different important topic: impact of social media. Now, world over, uh, because of social media, you're not seeing anybody. You don't even know who you're interacting with, but you write what you need to write, and sometimes that gets personal, and people start abusing, calling names, and all those things. So my question is, currently on social media we are seeing increase in hate messages being posted,
Yes.
and on the other side we also want freedom of speech. So my question is, what is the demark, like, where do people, can people say anything they want, or what is the limitation? What is your thought on that?
I've got some broad thoughts on social media. One thing is, I think 90% of what's on social media is a lot of garbage.
Hmm.
I talk to my younger son more than my older one, but you can't believe what you read on social media.
Hmm.
You cannot take it as gospel. It's not like the days when, if I wanted to find out how internal combustion engine worked, I went to the library. I got a book that was sort of certified, has been fact checked, and I could
Hmm.
take the facts and what I was reading to be true.
Hmm.
You know, Now what's on social media, everybody's got a platform, everybody's got a say, and it's an easy way to spread hate. And
Hmm.
and even our media, I believe, is spreading more hate than anything else. They
Hmm.
talk about systemic racism. They talk about,
Hmm.
it's a huge problem.
Hmm.
I think it's embellished. You know, I do
Hmm.
believe there's racism. I do believe there's racism all over the world because I've traveled all over the world.
Hmm.
I've had the privileges of being going around the world several times to many, many different countries.
Hmm.
And racism shows its form in many different things.
Hmm.
I mean, even in your country, I know depends what part of the country you come from, whether you're
Hmm.
liked or not. Depends which religion you
Hmm.
practice, whether you're discriminated against. Depends on the color of your skin, you
Hmm.
know. But that is also true in the Western world. I've been in people, in Europe. If you're from a certain part or north of the country versus the south of the country, if you're a true blood or if you're not a true blood. And I think we've forgotten about the true core values of life. Even within the Muslim community, there's different types of practice. Sunnis,
Hmm.
Shiites, what's the other one? I can't remember off the top of my
Sunni.
head, but Sunni, yeah. I mean, they hate each other. You talk about the slavery in the United States back in the 1700s. One of the first slaves in the United States were Scottish Irish. And we were brought there as slaves before the people from Africa. Slavery is a thing. It was done in years, and it's done today. The
Hmm.
conquering armies would enslave the indigenous people, and that had nothing to do with color of skin. That just had conquered.
I
It,
think compared to,
it
I don't know about other part, but overall the Canadian discourse has been mostly polite. Of course, there are some extreme views coming, but compared to other parts of the world, like in India and all that, I see it's more. It's compared to like if I have to rate 1 to 10, where 10 is you see more, attacks, personal attacks. I would say Canada in that way is like number 2, and probably India would be in 7 and 8 on social media. Like so many people with fake accounts, with partisan view, they are
well,
like abusing and all those things. So compared to that, I still feel Canada is doing much better, but we need to be very mindful. We need to keep an eye on those things.
Well, this is what I my ramblings there was the propaganda that we get is fueling this. I mean, I remember a Bible thing, red, yellow, black, or white, they are precious in His sight. And they were saying all God's children are the same.
Yeah.
And we were. I mean, I was always brought up to respect a person for who they are and what they are,
Mhm.
and to give value to every human life.
Mhm.
And I don't know where we've lost these values. I mean, there's always been the radical people,
Mhm.
but they were easy to identify during my years
Yeah.
because they didn't have a platform like social media.
Correct. Yeah.
But today, any Tom, Dick, or Harry, as we used to say, anybody can put something up there, and it can't be challenged.
Mhm.
The authenticity of what was being said cannot be challenged. There's no platform by which to challenge it.
Mhm.
And I also feel that they're not allowing good open discussion on different points of view.
Mhm.
The media is controlling the point of view, and even from my political beliefs, I'm called a racist just by association.
Mhm.
And anybody who knows me, uh, I'm probably one of the most least racist person in the world. And I have friends from every part of the world,
Mhm.
all walks of life. As you know, I'm in an interracial marriage,
Yep.
and yet just by the color of my skin and the demographics and the age group I'm in, you're a racist, you're a Nazi. Well, my family went to war against the Nazis.
Mhm.
I have members of my family that are LGBT community,
Mhm.
yet I'm automatically judged to be that. Yet they are complaining and fighting about them being judged in the same light. Yet they turn around and do that to others. So that it
I know.
becomes
I know you're a nice guy. That's all. I can endorse you.
yeah, but it becomes hypocritical.
That's the
You
way
can
the
call
world
me
is, right? As long as
yeah
you're clean in your heart, that's all matters. It doesn't matter what other thing.
yeah, and this is where I find social media. There's no controls,
Mm-hmm.
and the only controls that are put on there is what the controllers don't like.
Mm-hmm.
They'll remove somebody just because they didn't like what they said. But then the it's all one. It becomes one sided. But the problem is you can't trust it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we talk about the way we talk about it now is inciting racism.
Mm-hmm.
It's not doing anything to help it. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's the division, the old saying, divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be a movement to
Mm-hmm.
divide and conquer each of the countries.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some of the doctrine of Marxism and communism, that's exactly the way they attack it. And I don't think we see that clearly. We hear what we want to hear and believe what we want to believe instead of finding out the facts. It's
Mm-hmm.
too easy when you get this bombardment on social media
Mm-hmm.
about one side of the story or one particular point of view. And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
People are so quick to get on the keyboard and respond to a comment and and infuriate the other person. I've always seen that people are very quick to take a sentence out of a paragraph and they talk about the sentence, but if you read the sentence in the context in which it was written in the paragraph, that has a totally different meaning.
Mm-hmm.
They'll use a couple words against somebody and say that's what they said. Well, yes, in fact, they did say that, but if you read the context of the entire paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
it's totally different. And we've become so micro that we just attack, attack, attack. It seems to be a way of life today. You you have to be against somebody or something.
Okay.
And we're
So on my final question on social media is, do you think social media platforms should be suspended 1 month before the election and 1 month after the election?
I think that would be uh, reading so your agenda for tonight. I actually see value in doing that.
Mhm.
I don't see value in doing that. How practical it would be, I'm not too sure, but I do see a value in it just because of the outlash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my, because I know in technology you can do it basically because I'm in the security, cyber security, those that kind of
Yeah.
field. So I know you can actually block it based on geography also. Of course,
Yep.
it's not 100% perfect,
Yep.
but it definitely, I think if any country is having an election, so probably 1 month before and after the election, just to calm down things,
Yep.
no misleading information, no fake news, those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the entire social media platform needs to be rethought.
Hmm.
I think it's gone beyond what it was intended to be.
Hmm.
I mean, I like the idea with social media or some of the things you can do in WhatsApp. I can talk to my family in my homeland
Hmm.
via video conference, and it doesn't cost me anything more to do, which I think is fantastic.
Yep. I think it
When
has
I
expanded the scope of that definition, social media.
yeah, I mean, when I first came to this country, my mother wrote a letter, you know, uh, to back home. Took 2 to 3 weeks to get there, and time that people wrote back and you got their answer, that was 6 to 8 weeks old. People had passed away during that time. To make a phone call to Britain back in the late 60s, they didn't have phones in their house. You went to a phone box and put coins in. And, a long distance phone call in those days, would be $10 back in the late 60s, early 70s. Today it's free, basically speaking. So
I
I
think
think
one
I
good thing
think
about social
that's a
media
good
is
thing.
the speed of
Yeah.
information. I think in 1912, when the pandemic happened, people didn't know what was happening, right? So
No.
technology was evolving. Now with social media, the information just flies like within nanoseconds.
Yeah. And you got, like I said at the beginning, you got to question the validity of the information.
Correct. Yeah.
And
That's check. Yeah.
there's no real fact checking.
Yeah.
And people put stuff out there, and I think our society as a whole has become gullible.
Yeah. I think what I
We
say, I know in India there is one guy. I think he has a company. What he does is his company is actually just doing facts check. So
Yep.
even, and if somebody changes the picture or morph picture or edit anything, and if the opposition posted or the government representative posted, his company basically do a cross check and post it on social media whether this is true or false. So that's good
Yeah.
thing. I think I like to see that something in Canada, but overall Canada is comparatively better. I haven't seen much false information as far as the politicians are concerned, but that's a good thing. If you have some sort of a governance over it in terms of the fact check, that will definitely help.
My problem with social media is international. There's no borders.
Yeah.
I can read stuff from all over the world.
And
So
it's
there's
the other thing I fail to understand is, okay, a lot of social media, Twitter, Facebook is banned in China, but they
Mhm.
still allow the Chinese Communist government to use the foreign affairs, Twitter account. I
Sure,
don't know what's the reason. Like Twitter is not allowed in China, but they allow Chinese government to use Twitter account outside China. It's
sure,
like propaganda. So they're using these tools for their own propaganda, right?
absolutely. And this is what I say. It's very difficult. You let the genie out of the bottle, and it's hard to put the genie back in.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just be mindful of your time.
Yeah.
Just probably three more areas I want to cover. One is overall, how do you rate the Trudeau government and Duckford government? Two aspects: before pandemic, during pandemic. How do you rate? Let's start with the federal government, Justin Trudeau.
That's a very pointed question to me. I
Before
I
COVID
don't think.
and during the pandemic, right? Two
Yeah,
aspects are.
I don't. Before the pandemic, I believe his fiscal controls were poor. I believe that the Trudeau government. I don't believe it has been a great positive impact for Canada, and that's more to do the leadership of the party than the party itself.
What about
During
the
the
government
pandemic,
subsidy program for Canadians as well as for the business? What do you think?
I think the Trudeau government is being poor.
Mhm.
But having said that, during the pandemic, I think it's a very tough thing to do. And to get money out to Canadians and try to support
I think
Canadians,
that was positive. The $2,000.
I think that's been a very positive thing. I mean, all parties agreed to the stimulus and the CERB and all that, which I believe has helped a lot of companies survive. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot that won't survive even with these stimuluses.
Mhm.
My only concern is that you have no plan to stop spending.
Mhm.
You have no plan to get back to sort of balanced budgets. And
But I
even
think
if,
you know, just being a devil's advocate, so governments around the world, even if they are conservative or liberal, now everybody is spending money, right? So right
well, you
now,
have
I
to. Yeah,
believe
we
things are
have to.
not static, so it's changing. So it's very hard to predict, how things will evolve, right? There
And
is.
that's the question of the unknown is what's going to happen, a year from now or 2 years from now. But I think there has to be a spirit that you look at it
Mhm.
and just not worry about it. I think it's conversations that need to happen.
Mhm.
What do we do? There is going to be a day of reckoning, and it will come back to haunt future generations. And it's great
Mhm.
interest rates are low today, and for the foreseeable future. It's great that we're trying to help spend our way out of these. Uh,
But this is applicable for all countries. Like
well,
you
for
tell
all
me.
countries. The problem being is, who's buying up all this? How is it being funded? And one of the biggest impacts I see just right now, the cost of food in in Canada, or at least in our area, is just skyrocketed. That's
No,
the
that is true.
biggest. That's the biggest place I've noticed it on my disposable income. The amount of money I got to spend for food, and I lived through 21% mortgage rates. I
Mhm.
remember those days.
Yeah.
Had to be during the era of another guy called Trudeau,
Mhm.
but it's not inconceivable.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not inconceivable for interest rates to go up and inflation to go up, even up by 5%. Interest rates to 5%, and which will have profound impacts on people who've got high mortgages and that.
Yeah.
As their disposable income drops, it's it's a difficult question to answer, but I
Mhm.
believe you have to have some recognition to it and start looking at modeling projections going out beyond today. And it doesn't matter what government's going to be in, they're going to inherit some difficult decisions to be made in the future.
Mhm.
And and I don't think this particular government really worries about that. And I
Maybe
think
how
it's
about Doug Ford?
Doug Ford's the same way. He came out prior to the pandemic. He came in like a bull in a china shop,
Mm-hmm.
which I think you know having a strong mandate, but you can't alienate people either. You can't come out strong-handed right away because it's a phase shift, and I think you have to be a little bit more sensitive to what you do.
Mm-hmm.
During the pandemic, I think he's being more proactive and trying to do things for the community, but he's also got the same challenges as the federal government and everybody else. You're
Yeah.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, do we lock down the whole province? You're going to have a whole bunch of people cheering, and then you're going to have a whole bunch of people awful mad at you.
Yeah. Like what
Uh,
I say is, I think the initial my thought is the initial phase was good, but now I feel too much lockdown is counterproductive, especially for the small businesses, right? The focus
yes.
should be on people getting vaccination. They should push really hard. Of course, Doug
Eh,
Ford has no control over it, but I'm just saying because that's
well,
the only
that's just
way. Otherwise, these lockdowns are now counterproductive. And when we talk about hospital, what I say is even before COVID started, we all know like before when if you have to go to the hospital ER, it'll take at least 4 to 5 hours before you can even see a doctor for a non-critical illness. So now just
no, I
imagine
know.
after COVID, it'll be really bad, and of course the hospital will get overloaded with patients.
Hey, many of the hospitals and the funding for hospitals and funding for schools have been poor over the last 20 years.
Yep.
This is not something new, and this is an inherited problem.
Hmm.
Inherited in the fact that our governments didn't want to spend the monies.
Hmm.
This is where they cut back. The buildings were secure, so we didn't worry about them. We didn't invest in, trying to keep hospital beds open.
Hmm.
And it didn't become a priority for any of the governments. And you're right. I'm finding politics is becoming more um, not about what's right, the right thing to do or what's right. It's all about staying in power, and it's all about catering to a group of people. Who's ever screaming the loudest?
Hmm.
And if I remember, the teachers' unions were screaming that virtual courses was a bad thing. Now this has become a way of life. You
Hmm.
know, I I'm really, I guess I'm even getting disheartened in a way about the way our political society is working. It's not for the people anymore. It seems to be for the individuals who are in politics. It's
Hmm.
all about them. It's not about the people that they serve or the office that they hold to serve the people and the public and in general. And I think something needs to go a little bit back to why they're there and what their true duties are to society. And
Okay.
start to.
So the final question on this topic is okay for Trudeau government 1 to 10. How do you rate? 10 means really good, 1 means really bad. Same thing for Doug Ford. Simple answer.
I I say I give Trudeau a definite, one or two.
Okay.
Uh,
What about Ford?
Doug, I think he's only around the five or six. I don't think. I think he's struggling,
Hmm.
and when the politicians are struggling, we as a society struggle.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
I
Okay.
mean, I like I said with the federal government. I think it's not so much about the liberals as it is about not Pierre Trudeau, but Justin Trudeau, He just isn't what I consider to be a strong. He's a bit of a hypocrite, and he isn't the strongest leader he could be. I mean, he's got a lot of good people around him, I believe, but he's an individual. No,
Mhm.
I think he's a detriment to Canada and a detriment to what's going on. And I think Doug is, struggling as well. And as long as he struggles, we struggle.
Yeah, I think now he's.
You know?
I would like to see it in a pandemic. I'd like to see two government or maybe two premiers. One you work for 6 months, they are already tired, exhausted. They don't have any break, vacation, or off. It's better to have a fresh new look, new health officers.
Yep. Yep.
They're already
It is.
exhausted. What's the point of stretching them together? Of course, you can keep them as advisors and let
Yep.
somebody else takes us to a new direction, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, these guys are burned out too. They are.
Okay, that brings me to the probably last question, but 2 points. So that's about municipal
Yeah.
Waterloo region. Okay, so recently there was a petition call for City of Waterloo to allow backyard fire. Should the
Yeah.
city allow, since some other city already allow and it's safe? And
Yes. I know. I love my
okay,
backyard fire. I
and
love
one
my
more thing.
backyard fire.
Do you
Pardon me?
think we should have a uniform bylaw in Waterloo region? One bylaw for the whole three cities.
Yes, I do. I mean, a backyard fire, I think, is something, you know, people can relax around as long as it's safe. As long as you've built a proper fire pit and you have the amount of ground or land on your property to do it, you can conduct a fire in your backyard safely. For those who don't have the land available and don't have the hose beside it in case things get out of hand, or a proper fire pit, as I would call it. No, but I mean, I've had them all my life, and I think it's something relaxing to sit by an open flame and just try to relieve some stress. I think there should be some guidelines about how to do it, but I don't think it should be outright banned.
Mhm. Okay, that's good to know. So uh, I think we talked about just doing a half an hour session, and of course we had the technical issue. We sorted that
Yeah,
out, and we are now almost an hour. And
yeah.
I really
Well, I knew
appreciate.
that, Manny.
No, I really
Half an
appreciate.
hour. I was laughing. Yeah, right.
It. So it's good. I think we talked on a lot of issues which
Yeah.
are relevant to the current scenario.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you again for your time,
Yeah.
and
Thank
hopefully
you,
we'll
Manny.
catch up some other time. Okay.
Yeah. Well, stay safe, and I think it's very trying times we're going through, and I think we have to be sensitive and have a little bit of compassion and empathy to those who are severely struggling, um, and hopefully somehow that we'll come out on the other side of this a little bit better and more learned than we were, with some positive things that we can take forward in our lives.
Yeah,
But it is a trying time, and I think a little bit of compassion and empathy towards people,
I agree.
people need to be. I know stress causes anger and tempers flare, and you see it in the parking lots, you see it in the stores, you see it in the family units, and
Yep.
it's we just have to try to work together as a community and to find some ways of getting some stress relief. And during this time, it's very difficult. Our religious places, we can't go there, and they're telling us not to go visit people, and it's very challenging and very difficult on any human being that's going through this. And all I
No,
can say is that,
yeah, no, you're well said.
pardon
And I
me?
just want to remind everyone, make sure you wear
Yeah, good. My masks are in my car. I got a couple in the house, but
Yeah.
anyways,
Okay, Tom.
Manny, I appreciate the time, and we'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon. Take
Yeah.
care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.